Growing Wider is all about welcoming outsiders. The pastor you're about to hear from takes this seriously and has grown his parish big time above and beyond their pre-COVID attendance numbers. Today in the studio, we've got Father Charlie Garza, pastor at St. Albert the Great, a multicultural parish in Austin, Texas. Get ready to be inspired by his energy and enthusiasm. Learn how he leads by example, isn't afraid to fail, and is always thinking outside of the box. Get ready to learn. Hey there, Father Charlie. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, great to be with y'all today.
Well, first, could you please tell our listeners a little bit about you and a little bit about your parish?
Sure. So St. Albert the Great is in Austin, Texas. We're not really a suburban parish. We're kind of on the outskirts of Austin. Austin, right around 1 million. I like to say it's kind of like a Portland of Texas or California of Texas as far as kind of a tech kind of sector. And we're a very multicultural parish. So we have folks from over 60 countries that are here.
Wow.
We're about 55% Spanish speaking to about 45% English speaking.
That is amazing. Oh my goodness. I didn't realize that you had people from 60 different countries. That's absolutely incredible. Oh my goodness. Well, we're talking about growing wider and building a culture that welcomes people. And in looking at your weekly attendance numbers, I was just so excited and just thought, oh my gosh, we have to talk to Father Charlie for this episode. So your weekly mass attendance, correct me if I'm wrong here, you're about 4,200 people in person every weekend and about 400 people online every weekend. Is that right?
That's correct. Yes.
So, sorry, go ahead.
No, it's all right.
I was just going to ask you, what was your attendance like before you began focusing on growing wider and focusing on parish renewal?
Sure. So I arrived here July 1st of 2019. So it's a little history lesson. I know we try to forget that period, but it was about 9 months before everything shut down with the pandemic. And at that time, St. Albert's was around 2,500 total weekly mass attendance. The majority, we were about probably at that time, maybe about 65% English speaking, and about 35% or so Spanish speaking.
Okay, wait, can we take a quick time out? Can we draw attention to something for a second, please?
Sure.
Okay. So pre-COVID, you were at 2,500 weekly, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And you've been around, that most parishes haven't even reached pre-COVID numbers yet, right?
Correct.
And you're telling me you've almost doubled your pre-COVID numbers?
That's correct.
That is absolutely mind-blowing. That's incredible. Okay, I just had to draw attention to that. I'm sorry, continue on.
Sure. So in Spanish, we're 222% above pre-COVID attendance. And then in English, we're 7% above pre-COVID attendance numbers. We've been very blessed in how we've been able to continue to grow our community. So.
Oh my gosh, that's incredible. So clearly something is going on here. So let's dig into that. And we know that a lot of what happens in a parish comes from the leadership of the pastor. How do you as the pastor effectively communicate the importance of hospitality and welcoming newcomers to the entire parish community?
Sure. I believe it always begins with just your mentality, right? To give you an example, I know that when I was in the early stages of priesthood, I've been a priest for about 14 years. Next week, I'll celebrate my 14th anniversary of the priesthood.
Oh, happy anniversary.
Thank you. It was something that I remember, I would celebrate a funeral and I would get annoyed because no one would know the responses. Basically, people weren't going to church, right?
Right.
And quite frankly, I'll hate to say it, but at that stage of the game, I was annoyed. It was more like, man, why aren't these people knowing this, etc. I didn't initially have perhaps the most welcoming kind of mindset. And I remember praying to God about it. And God kind of said, like, Charlie, this is an opportunity. These are people who, if they don't know the responses, they don't know when to stand, that indicates that they're not coming to church. And so the first thing that I kind of had to do was to change my mindset, and to have a mindset that rather than seeing those things as annoying, that I saw them as opportunities, to see them as excitement, to see how could I be extra smiling. And I think that's the first step that's hard for us, because it can be frustrating when you're dealing with folks, not just for leaders, but also for, the folks that are in our pews and that kind of come to church on a regular basis. And there can be this mindset that we have that, man, like, why aren't they coming to church? Why aren't they doing this? And I think the first thing is, can we see and have a mindset change as leaders to say, we've got an opportunity here.
Yes.
And when we start to see that as an opportunity, I believe that's what really helps with the growth change, because if I don't see those things as opportunities and as a blessing and as a way to grow, it's going to get short circuited, right? I'm going to make a snarky comment. I'm going to scowl at someone rather than smiling at them. There's going to be stuff that's going to happen, and I'm going to kind of sabotage the efforts of welcoming and growing. So I think it's just that way when we have to kind of be honest with ourselves and say, do we see this as an opportunity?
Oh my gosh. That's key, because I feel like sometimes we can be jaded, and we know that parish life is so busy and we're all trying to do the best that we can. And when you're doing multiple funerals a week and all of these masses every week, preparing multiple homilies a week, plus everything else that parish life entails, it's very easy to be like, oh my gosh, these people don't know anything, or why aren't they coming? But by shifting your mindset and saying, wow, the people here in these pews at this funeral today, and I know you've got a funeral right after this interview, but the people who are sitting here today, these are the outsiders that I need to be welcoming. These are the unchurched and the dechurched. And by scowling at them, you're doing a disservice, and you're letting them, you're reminding them of why they don't come to church. But by changing that mindset and giving them that smile and letting them know they're welcome here, even if they don't necessarily feel comfortable right away, you're helping them shift that perception of the Catholic Church and making them feel welcome, even if it's just in that moment. I love that. Now, how do you take that mindset and communicate that with the rest of your parish?
So I've always believed leadership, and Jesus really gave it, right? He said, do it by example, right?
Right.
Or one of my favorite expressions is, use words when necessary. So just by, I have a standard practice when we're about ready to process in. We always have the stream of folks that are coming in right on time or maybe a little bit late, right?
Yep.
And most folks, I know that's when the scowl happens, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why aren't you, coming in late? I remember at my previous parish, I called it the lector death stare, that the lector, literally as they were walking in, there would be the person would eyeball them all the way down to the pew. And I'm just I remember at my last parish, I'm trying to I'm holding, I like to say I white knuckle the presider's chair sometimes when I saw that, because I'm just this person's never coming back. So just quite frankly, by my attitude, when I see that, I smile at them. And I know it sounds so simple, but just by smiling versus scowling, and if you ever do that, I love the thing about a smile, it's reflex.
Yes.
People can't scowl back at you if you smile at them. They literally will have an involuntary response that they will smile back at you at that moment. So I found that just by doing that simple thing, that me smiling, my ministers started noticing that.
Interesting.
And they started, even before I started verbally saying something to them, they saw my body language. They saw that I was smiling, that I wasn't scowling, etc., that I would do things like, hey, come in, etc., to some of the folks that were coming. And that, believe it or not, that simple kind of gesture, just that smile, communicates a message to the rest of, my parishioners, and especially, ushers, hospitality team, et cetera. So that's what I mean. It's that attitude. And if I'm showing that kind of a welcoming type of an attitude, then that's when it starts to spread to my other key leaders, my key volunteers, et cetera.
Oh, that is so good. And you're right. It does sound so simple, but how powerful is a smile? It's contagious. That's so good. Now we talked a little bit about now what you do and how you communicate, and then how that in turn has made an impact on some of your volunteer ministers. But in your experience, what role does the rest of the parish play in sustaining a welcoming environment, and how can they be actively empowered to participate in this effort of being welcoming?
Sure. So as one kind of communicates, in the way I lead, but what I learned kind of early on is then I got sabotaged along the process.
Oh, tell me more about that.
So if I, smile at someone coming in, right, but then they get into the pew, and I always call it it's the end of the pewers, right? This end of the pew is my end of the pew, and you ain't going, well, I'll let you go to the middle of the pew, but I'm not getting up.
Right.
And I'm not like swinging my legs, so you can like crawl over me, right? And so, believe it or not, again, that sabotages. If I can have hospitality folks and I train them and I say, hey, smile when they come in, welcome to St. Albert the Great, bring them in. But then if I get them into the pew and that kind of a thing happens, then I just undid all the welcoming, et cetera, because it said basically a message, well, you don't have a space here, and, you're having to go to the middle, right? So I teach my folks that we really have 4 circles of hospitality.
And tell us about those.
And to be honest, we're working on one of those circles. The first one begins in the parking lot, and that's where I have to be honest. That's the one we're still working on. We haven't gotten that one quite down. But just seeing people when they come in, having people to greet, direct them, smile. Part of the challenge there has been good. There are people that are good at saying, hey, go to this parking spot. But it's more than just, hey, go to this parking spot. It's hey, welcome to St. Albert the Great. So that's part of where we've had some challenges. Then it's welcoming them as they walk from where their cars are parked. We have like a big kind of plaza area before you get to the front doors of our church. And so again, we're trying to work on welcoming them as they get to that part. We do well with like big liturgies, like, Easter. For us, Our Lady Guadalupe, Palm Sunday are kind of big ones. Then once you get to the front doors, we have folks that have been trained. Then once you get into the inside church, you got folks that have been trained. So I like to say circle 1's the parking lot. Circle 2 is that area right before they get to kind of the front doors, the exterior of the church. Circle 3 is once they're inside kind of the entrance of the church. And then circle 4 is once they're coming to the pews. Now, I can control every one of those circles through key volunteers, folks that we've been trained. The circle I can't control, and this is where it kind of comes to your question, is circle the last one, because that's once they're in the pews. That means that I have to instill a culture with my parishioners that they're being welcoming, to say something like, hey, as long as you don't have mobility issues yourself, can you scoot over to the middle of the pew? Or if you have mobility issues, at least smile at them and say, I'm sorry, I can't scoot over because I have mobility issues. Okay. But training my parishioners to do that is one of the hardest parts. And so it's actually something that before, like Christmas, Easter, the big times, right? I literally say this from the pew or from the pulpit. I say, and I give examples of the ones I just did, and I'll go through the scenarios. I'll say like the ones that are on the end of the pew and that you have to like crawl over, and I try to play it up so it's like got some humor to it, right? Because they know, they know exactly what you're talking about, right? And so it takes time to do that, and I have to repeat it every single time we come to that time of year. It's just something I have to keep doing as a leader to reinforce that. So I've got to create that kind of culture and that clarity of hospitality. This is important, but then I've got to keep reinforcing it on a regular basis, especially when I know we're going to have large numbers of folks that normally don't come to church coming. And having and instilling that in my folks is something that, is really important.
Oh my gosh, that's so good. And I love how you share that you put a bit of humor into it too, because they they also, I'm sure, want the church to grow. And we never want anyone to feel like they're being scolded or shamed for being that person on the end of the pew. But it also takes a little bit of a mindset shift for them as well. Like, oh, when I don't move over, that could be misconstrued as not being welcoming to people. So letting them know that they also play an important role in welcoming people. That's huge. And it's so smart that you do that before some of those big key liturgies when you know that you're going to have a packed house. Mm-hmm. Well, I'm wondering, could you please share some specific examples with us of some initiatives or practices that your parish has implemented to enhance this culture of welcome?
Sure. So I found that people like acronyms.
Yes, they do.
So one of my team members, and to give credit, this is not something I came up with. This was one of my team members that I basically said, I delegated them. I said, because I'm good with like the welcoming and kind of, I'm like a vision person. I'm good with, kind of saying the big kind of, I like to say the 30,000 feet and explaining kind of things, but I'm not a detail person. So I like to surround myself with people. And so kind of the first thing, just for those out there that are listening, okay, is that just always remember you don't have to do it yourself. So if you're not that person that's detailed, if you're more vision like me, if you present that vision, get those detailed people, then they'll come up with this stuff, right? So I didn't come up with the acrostic I'm about to share, but we came up. One of my team members came up with what's called GROW, GROW, and so the G starts with getting connected. So we've got a welcome table that is in our narthex entryway area of our church, and we have volunteers that we've been training to be there, and so they have like a little connection card. For those that are familiar with some of Nativity's initiative, we use the acronym FLEM, first name, last name, email address, and mobile phone number. So we've got a little connection card that has that information. We also have a way that folks can just do that electronically with us as well. So once we kind of capture that initial information with getting connected with them, then we pass to the next part, which is our R, which is receive information. So that's when the first part is getting them to do something. And when also at the welcome table, like we have a gift. So something we announce at all of our masses is that we explain, at every mass where that welcome area is. We say that there's a gift because, who doesn't like a gift? So
yeah, what's your gift? I want to know.
So it depends. We've done ones where it's like, we've done like those little kind of thermoses, kind of things that people like to do that has like our parish logo. We've also done like a book that our diocese did for like our 75th anniversary kind of a thing. So we try to basically see like what would be kind of something that would be, people would like, right, to receive for our target audience. And since we're a bilingual parish, in English and Spanish, we've learned we have different gifts for the different cultures. For instance, something that has Our Lady of Guadalupe or a rosary, even if they're ironically unchurched and they're not kind of, or de-church and they're not coming in Spanish, like that's key, right? But if we were to give a rosary out, we actually... when we were kind of figuring this out, we would find our gift left in our narthex. And then we're like, all right, that's not working in English, right? So that's also, if you're trying to figure out what's the right one for you, you try giving stuff and you notice that they're leaving it, you haven't hit the mark yet.
Right.
So, just an FYI. But that's kind of our get connected is we get their information, we give them that gift. Then what we do is we want them to receive information. So we send them kind of a welcome email. And again, it depends on our cultures. So in English, email is big. In Spanish, email is not. So we actually do in Spanish, we're trying to shift now more towards a text message. So I'm very excited because we are just getting into something called Grow Method, and it's a special program. I believe Nativity actually uses this particular connection program because what they'll do is once you get the information, it'll like literally scan it in for you, and then you can send text messages to them directly. So it's something that we're working on, kind of adding from a technology bit. And I always tell my team we're looking for technology that makes our job simpler, and I always say if it helps to simplify, the number of person hours that we've got to be dedicating from our staff or volunteers, like we're going for it, right? So,
yeah.
they get that information from us, again, the email, the text message, and then we also give them a live phone call from a person sometime during the week after they've initially connected to us. And that could be whether it's they connect in person or whether they connect to us online as well. So that's something that online we've been doing. I always like to say when I see nativity, it's something you could be daunting, right? So if any of you ever look at nativity and you're like, I can't do online, just start with something. That's what we do. And we have a very simple kind of way that we do it. But we find that people will check us out first online before they then come in person. And so that's why we've kind of tried to do a dual kind of get connected. Then we have the O in grow, which is opportunities. So we try to look at something that those folks that are just kind of, it's like we use the analogy of like when you're testing the water, right? You like dip your toe in first to see. So we look at what are opportunities, and it depends. Sometimes their opportunity is they want to come for sacraments, right? So they're looking for like baptism is a big one, with some of our folks, or maybe they're interested in marriage or confirmation. And so we want to see, okay, is it kind of a sacrament opportunity? And then, okay, that's one way that we would kind of shift in directing. Sometimes it's they're looking for stuff for their children. And so, okay, is it more of kind of a children's type, opportunity? So we have different kind of opportunities, but they're again targeted towards folks that would just be kind of getting connected with us. Then for us, we like to say at St. Albert's, our secret sauce is retreats. So when we started breaking down and seeing when we were growing, when everyone else wasn't growing, during the pandemic, we were asking ourselves, what are we doing differently that no one else is doing? And it boiled down to one thing: retreats. So we literally have retreats here probably every 3 weeks.
Whoa. Tell us more about this. I have never heard of a parish doing retreats every 3 weeks. Tell us more.
So some of it is because, again, dual languages. Okay.
Right.
So that's part of the frequency thing. But we have retreats that are part of our newcomer path. So the end of the grow, the W in grow, is what we call Welcome Weekend. So Welcome Weekend, many parishes might be familiar with CHIRP, Christ Renews His Parish. Matthew Kelly, Dynamic Catholic, kind of took the rights of Christ Renews His Parish CHIRP a few years ago and kind of rebranded it as Welcome Weekend. And so we found kind of success with that retreat method. It helps people to, come to that place of accepting, Jesus as Lord and Savior. And so through that retreat, we've just found a lot of success. So we do everything that we do in our grow method, our newcomer path, is geared towards getting them towards that retreat.
Wow.
So we view that if we get them on that Welcome Weekend retreat, then we can start shifting them from a newcomer path to our discipleship path. Now, sometimes not everybody that comes through, us will go on the Welcome Weekend, but we found our greatest success is if we get them onto that retreat, it becomes a lot easier to transition them into the discipleship path. And we just noticed what was the difference in our folks kind of getting engaged, really becoming disciples, etc. It was the ones that went on that retreat, it was like night and day difference.
Whoa.
And the blessing is, a lot of times, if you're trying to figure out stuff, it's like, okay, how do I figure out the retreat? Well, Dynamic Catholic, the reason I like using a lot of their stuff is because they have the same mindset of focusing on the unchurched. And so that whole idea of calling it welcome is because they know that a lot of times if people are kind of de-churched, not going to church, they don't feel welcome. So they literally created a retreat that's geared towards that. And so it just really fit well into kind of our approach, our path, and we've found a lot of success with that.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. So you have found a way by implementing this grow path for people that is bringing them in, making them feel welcome, making them feel connected right away. And one of the things that you said that I absolutely loved was you kind of have been tweaking along the way. You found what works with one part of your culture and you found what maybe doesn't. So you're tweaking it to work. And I think that's so important for people to understand, especially parish leaders, because again, sometimes we do face some of these challenges and it's just good to know that you can still be successful. All you have to do is kind of shift that a little bit. Now, You mentioned some challenges that you faced already, like, some things you can't control, like those people sitting on the ends of the pews who maybe won't let people in. What are some of those other challenges you faced when trying to build a welcoming culture at your parish?
So it was interesting because as I started talking about, this theme of welcoming, and, our target unchurched person or de-church person, we call him Austin Albert. So just like Nativity has Timonium Tim, we call him Albert Austin in English, and we call him Alberto de Austin in Spanish.
Love it.
And one of the first thing in both of those, they're in the young adult demographic, just kind of our geographic area. So 20 to 30s is like our target. A little bit younger target in English and a little bit older target in Spanish. And what we found is that, let us say, a certain older generations started to say things like, well, what about us? And it was almost like, oh, well, you're focusing on the young people. What about us, right? And so that was actually a big challenge because they pushed back, and it's been a process of trying to communicate. And I'll just be honest, I'm a great listener. Communicating has been something that God's been working, and I keep praying for God to help me with, because a lot of times people can misunderstand some of the stuff, right? So
Right.
I would be enthusiastic saying, yeah, okay, we've identified this target group. We're in the young adults. We're going to focus on the young adults. And then I got like pretty significant pushback in my English community because people were like, well, we're going to get left out, right? So it was, and then part of it was trying to figure out, okay, where is this coming from with them? Why are they feeling, this way? And what I found success with is to say, but haven't you had, told me that your, kids, your grandkids
Yes.
have stopped going to church, et cetera, right? And
Yes.
so at first we weren't having success until we kind of shifted our communication strategy to say, if you're worried about, your kids, grandkids not coming to church, like, we're doing something about that.
Yes.
We want to be a church that your kids and grandkids that have fallen away will want to come to. And as we as that message kind of started to trickle, and again, I would say we're not done with it, right? We're on the way. As always, I like to tell this to my team all the time. It's not a sprint. It's a continual, run, that you're working on here. So, but as we kind of connected that message, because it's almost like where was that pain point in their hearts? Because they see that, those loved ones that are not going, and as they saw that we're kind of addressing that pain point. And so I think that's where I found pushback. It's like, I would not always understand what were people's pain points. Why was it that they were pushing back, et cetera? And it's some way that I think they would say, oh, well, you're not seeing us, you're not hearing us. And it takes time sometimes to kind of understand that. And to be honest, humility, I have to get over myself, right? Because at first it can be frustrating being like, man, why aren't, like, come on, people, like, get over the plan, right? So that's kind of what, we've tried to do.
Oh my gosh, that's so good. And I was cheering inside for you when you said you made the connection for them of, didn't you say you want your kids and grandkids to come back? Because that right there is one of the biggest pain points for that generation. And I can tell you, I know of other parishes where that older generation has said that as well. Well, if you're aiming towards like families with young kids, that's not me. And I've been here this whole time. So what are you going to do for me? And it's making that connection to let them know, like, number one, you have people in your life that you love that aren't here. We're working on getting them here. And number two, you play an important role as a part of that generation of helping to welcome them. So that way, when it's somebody else's child or grandchild that's returned, they feel welcome and loved on by everybody. So I'm so glad that you helped them make that connection. It can be really tricky. Now, you shared with us that, as a multicultural parish, you've learned some things to help you, and you've tailored your welcoming strategy for each culture. What advice do you have for other multicultural parishes out there? What considerations could they have when trying to make their own welcoming plan?
Sure. One of the first things I encourage is you have to first realize what are your big events, right?
Yeah.
So I always hear, right, Christmas and Easter. Well, guess what? For Spanish, that's not true. Christmas is actually one of our lowest attended of big ones for our Spanish target. For Alberto de Austin, that is not a big thing. If we want in December to target, it's not Christmas, it's Our Lady of Guadalupe. Because most of our folks in our Spanish-speaking community come from Mexico. We will get 3,200 people at our Lady Guadalupe Mass.
Whoa.
Okay. And at our Christmas Spanish Mass, we're lucky to get 1,000.
Wow.
Okay. So now, granted, we offer some more Spanish Masses for Christmas than we do for Our Lady
Sure.
Guadalupe, but still, we get more of our target group in Spanish at Our Lady Guadalupe than we do at Christmas. It's kind of a culture thing
Right.
where Christmas is not as big a deal, but Our Lady Guadalupe is huge, right?
Oh my gosh, that's
Also,
so interesting.
The other irony is Palm Sunday is bigger for the same Spanish-speaking community than Easter is.
Oh my gosh.
Our Palm Sunday, Sunday 2 p.m. Mass, again, we're going to be over 2,500. We're going to be pulling out into our courtyard area, overflowing, okay? And at Easter, we're going to not go into our courtyard area at our Spanish Masses.
Wow.
So the first thing is you have to realize what are those big things for each culture. And that's what I found is we think to ourselves, okay, Christmas and Easter. And that's true for a lot of the English unchurched and de-churched folks, but it's not necessarily true for your other cultures. So you have to identify what are those big events first. Now in English, yes, we're bigger on that, but in our area, the other one that's actually bigger for us than Christmas is Ash Wednesday.
Right.
Okay.
It is.
For us, we get more people on Ash Wednesday than we get for Christmas. So Easter's our number one, Ash Wednesday's our number two, and then Christmas and Our Lady of Guadalupe are about 3 and 4, but they're pretty close as far as for our community. So you kind of have to identify what that is for your folks because it changes your strategy. So we actually, ironically, we would not do something like what Nativity does for Christmas because that's not where we need to be dedicating. We actually are better off dedicating a lot of energy and enthusiasm and stuff. So we're actually looking in 2025 to rent a local soccer stadium that's near our parish, like the equivalent of what Nativity does with fairgrounds. We're gearing up to do that for Our Lady of Guadalupe 2025 because we've surpassed our campus. We can't bring any more people. And again, knowing the culture, because our target audience loves soccer, we know that people are gonna be like, we're gonna do mass in the soccer stadium. That's gonna be
cool.
That's gonna be really, but I mean, you can just imagine logistical headaches, right? But,
Sure.
But that's what I mean is you got to know your cultures, you got to know your group and what are the times of year when they're most likely to come to you. And it can vary from culture to culture. I think that's the most important because we do those days well. That is what really is our big feeding drivers for all of our other stuff. And because it communicates a message, right? Those communities know, wow, they show up and they're ready for us for those days. Whereas the other places that Catholic churches they go to, because they have not kind of caught on to that emphasis, they're not ready on those days.
Right.
And so you have to kind of realize what's your Super Bowls, right? For your particular cultures. And I think that's the biggest kind of starting place.
Oh my gosh. I have to tell you, Father Charlie, I got chills when you said you were going to do the Our Lady of Guadalupe Mass in a soccer stadium. That is just so exciting. And I can't wait to see photos and videos from that Mass. That's something that please send them to us so we can share them when that happens, because I just love that vision. And we're going to talk in a couple minutes about what your vision is for growth. But that right there, just what a fun outside the box idea for meeting those cultures where they're at and not trying to do just a one size fits all strategy where we talk about this. Sometimes people think that at Rebuilt, we try and say, okay, well, you're coaching with us now. We're going to try and make you do everything exactly the way Nativity has done it. no, that's not it. We share with you the framework and then you run with it and make it work within your parish. And my goodness, your parish has just done such a beautiful job of this, of tailoring this framework to fit your needs. And your results are proof of, oh my gosh, you've grown to so far over pre-COVID numbers. That's incredible. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, here's just another question for you. What advice do you have for parishes who are maybe just getting started with trying to grow wider? What advice or recommendations could you give to them?
Sure. Well, I love what you just said, because that I think is the first thing. Because I'll be honest, we were successful at my last parish before I kind of got with Rebuilt. But initially, I started to focus, honestly, a little bit too much on what Nativity was doing. Mm-hmm. And I think the first stage is just realizing that. Yeah. Is that your parish is not in Timonium, Maryland.
Right.
You need to say where your parish is. And, you know, some of the same things, if your geographic area is like Timonium, okay, like maybe you can do a copy paste because that will work. But if your geographic area is very different, it's not going to work because it's not the same folks, right? So I think it's the first thing is, I think what you just said, learn the principles. But what we can do as human beings is, I think we like to copy paste, right?
Right. It's easier, right?
We think, okay, if I just do this and just do this exactly like the way Nativity does it, then it's all going to work out. And then we're like, oh, well, it's not working. And we don't realize it's not that the method isn't broken. It's that we're trying to implement it exactly the same way. And that it's not a cookie cutter, right? Right. So to me, I think that's the first thing is saying, okay, these are principles. And I tell this to my team all the time, right? I said, these are principles that we need to adapt and apply to our circumstances. And the principles work, the anchors work. But we've got to figure out, and it's where, you know, quite frankly, it's on us, that we have to do the work to say, okay, what are the particular things that will work for our folks by taking the methods and the framework? So I think that's the first step that I just encourage, right, is just having that kind of a mindset, because I think that's where we can self-sabotage. And I've seen parishes that sometimes struggle because they're trying to do the copy paste and they don't realize they're trying to do the copy paste. And that's the reason why that they're struggling. It's not that they're really, that's just the first thing, right? So, so once one kind of has that sense, okay, I understand the principles, and you start to apply it, start doing something.
Yes.
And I know that sounds simple to everyone, but when St. Albert the Great was leaders during the pandemic, people were like, what are we doing that no one else is doing, right? Mm-hmm. Literally, that's what I kept telling my team. We're going to do something.
Yes.
Because as human beings, we get paralyzed. It's like we have a lot of deer in our area. So like it's like if you've seen a deer, like, and you get the lights in it, like they freeze, right? And I think what happens is we start to realize, man, we're in trouble, right? Like our parish is having struggles, and we freeze. Yep. And we don't do anything, right? So I think after one starts to realize, okay, I can take these methods, I learn these methods, the structure, and I need to apply it, but I'm going to be different than what Timonium, Maryland is. The second thing is just to say, we're going to try something, and don't get discouraged. For everything that we've done that's been successful, I could tell you stories of everything we've done that hasn't worked out. And I think, we could do another podcast. It might be a good one.
Oh my gosh, that would be a fun one.
Work, okay? But I think that's important, right? Because when we try something and you have that courage, right? You have that courage and you start to do something, and the something you do doesn't work the first time, takes the wind out of your sails, right? Yep. And so what we'd say is, okay, we try something, and we have a thing. If we're going to fail fast. Yep. You can usually tell within a few weeks and months it's working or it ain't working, right? Right. And so if it isn't working, we say, okay, this one didn't work. It's going to the side. When I shared that grow with you, that was after a number of failures.
Oh, see, and
Okay.
this is the stuff people need to know. Like,
So
yes,
it wasn't
it's
like we had,
hard.
like the tablets that came down from Mount Sinai, okay, that had grow on it, right? That was after several years of trying stuff and trying frameworks, and like, okay, like that didn't work. Okay,
Right.
this is working, and like, okay, and so literally, we came up with grow by realizing, okay, this is what worked. That wasn't what worked, and we kept that out of the framework, right? So it literally, our failures produced that. And so I think that's, the message is, don't be afraid to fail. If there's one thing that I always say as a leader, I am not afraid of a bad idea or something doesn't pan out. But what I am absolutely resistant to is that we're going to try something, and we're going to keep trying and doing something different until we find what works. Uh,
Yes.
and it doesn't matter how many failures you've got. I tell my folks, we look at the cross, right? I say, in one sense, when you look at what happened with Jesus, right, you can seem like a failure. And it's clear in the scriptures, right? But Jesus, had to encourage them. And so if any of you have tried stuff and you just are like, you kind of feel like the wind got out of your sails, try again, because you might be that close to a resurrection experience where it does pan out and work out for you.
Right. Oh my gosh. Thank you for sharing with such authenticity, because I feel like sometimes people can be afraid to share their failures. And you absolutely hit the nail on the head. We as church leaders can get paralyzed when we say, oh, there's a problem. What am I supposed to do about this problem? But by taking action, even if it's imperfect action, we're getting somewhere. And there's a couple results that could happen. Like you just said, we could fail and then we learn from it, or we could be successful and something amazing happens. So thank you for leading with authenticity and for sharing that with our listeners. So I have just a question for you about your vision. So you already shared with us such a cool vision of what you want to do for Our Lady of Guadalupe next year. What are some of those other big visions you've got for growing wider at St. Albert the Great?
Yeah, so because of the Grow's success, we're kind of outpacing our campus for these big things. So for Our Lady of Guadalupe, and we're looking at Ash Wednesday, also kind of doing the same kind of thing.
Oh, wow.
So really, I think the first vision is, again, it's like, the expression "go big, go home," right? So,
Right.
so I think once you identify what are those big days, like, you invest in that. While all the weekend, the regular weekend stuff in hospitality is important, if someone's kind of going, I think it's really having good vision for those big events, because it takes a ton of planning, right? Like, I had to say 2025 because it took probably 9 months just for people not to say no way, Father Charlie, okay? So it takes time, right, for those big ones. But if you really kind of build and plan up for it, so and that's where I would say part of our vision is we're trying to get more strategic and look more out. While doing the little wins are important to build momentum, we also are trying right now to focus on, again, some of those big ones. So it's focusing on kind of those big kind of events. The GROW method, we just translated into Spanish for crecer. So also part of our vision is, we've been working on this path, in our English. We're making sure that we mirror it, the one church, one message. Crecer, for those that don't speak Spanish, means grow. So we just took the Spanish word for grow. And with the acrostic, it's the same kind of stuff that I mentioned. So the C is those ways that when you're first trying to kind of connect with folks, it kind of works as far as when we did the acrostic, right? So we're working on our vision of saying, how do we take this in both communities and kind of go parallel with what works with them? And so that's part of our vision, is taking that, grow and crecer right now. And that's kind of where we're focusing a lot. Also, we're focusing a lot on training folks, because that's also something we've identified, is that some of our hospitality folks, they want to be hospitality, they want to welcome folks, and they just naturally get it. There's some that have the energy, but they need help to know, like, hey, some of the stuff you're doing is actually coming across as not welcoming. You don't realize that. You want to be welcoming. Like, it is welcoming for you, but it's not like welcoming for other people. So training's another part of our big vision that we're working on right now, aside from those big events. And just continuing, to kind of keep that momentum. And this might again sound a little strange, but I find that the enemy tries to sabotage and to take those moments that are going to suck out the wind out of your sails.
Yeah.
So I'm not naturally the cheerleader type, or I went to a college where they had yell leaders, where it's like male cheerleaders kind of thing. But a lot of what I have to do is hey, we're doing great, right? But sometimes it's acknowledge, okay, yeah, that didn't quite go right, but hey, look at this other stuff, right? Because there are moments, even with those numbers I shared with you, we forget it. So I have to remind people sometimes, because literally it's you can see the look on the face and the defeat or whatever. And it's guys, we're winning.
Yes.
Do you know how, what you said earlier, right? Do you know how incredible it is? We are above. Do you know how unusual that is? Do you know that nobody in the city of Austin has that? Okay, it's so. I think it's also part of that vision, right? Is enthusiasm and all that. It's not my natural. I'm more of kind of a mellow kind of type of personality, but I've had to learn, okay, I've got to get excited about this, and so part of the vision, believe it or not, is just reminding of those wins, continuing to keep that momentum going, so to speak.
Oh my gosh, that's so important, because as we celebrate those wins and successes, that also builds up our confidence. So what you're doing an incredible job by building up your team and reminding them, look, this is incredible. We are other parishes are on the decline right now. We're not only growing, but we're growing tremendously. I mean, when you reinforce those positive behaviors, they're just going to keep having more of those positive behaviors, and their confidence is going to build up. And you're doing such an incredible job too with learning from those failures. I just can't wait to see what your team does in this next year. It's so exciting to get to be someone that gets to watch what you're doing. So thank you. And Father Charlie, I just want to say this has been such a fun interview. Thank you for taking the time to join us today. Thank you for sharing from your heart and sharing authentically and encouraging our listeners out there.
So thank you for the opportunity. And just again, for those that are hearing it, everyone can again have that success. It's just we got to keep persevering when we have those down times. But I would say if we persevere long enough, we keep running the race, we'll get to that finish line. So
yes, amen, absolutely. Well, Father Charlie, thank you again. We are so grateful for you. We are so grateful for our community out there. We pray that this has blessed you today, and we'll see you next week.
Great. Thank you.